Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the show. It is episode 327. August 8th, 2022. August 8th is a beautiful day. And we're joined once again by Kyle Klingman in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Kyle, how was your weekend?
Worked a lot on projects for Flow Sports, a company that I love, and just kind of getting caught up from Rome and the U17 World Championships. Had a blast there. Still buzzing from that environment. I love the World Championship concept, no matter what level. Yeah. So the U20s are going to be coming up here on FloWrestling, and I'll be waking up early to watch all of that live. You got to watch it live. I think that's important. So can't wait to tune into that.
Yeah, and speaking of Rome, somebody who's out there with you, our guest for today, it's Angel Cejudo. He had a guy wrestling out there and was coaching, and man, he's done a lot of wrestling his whole entire life. Angel, how the heck are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Man, I'm fantastic. Thanks. And I want to talk about, there's so much, right? Valiant Prep, and we can work our way backwards, but I kind of want to go from the start, right? How old were you when you got into wrestling? When did you first step on a wrestling mat? And what do you remember, and what was that like?
So I was in 6th grade when I first started. So I was roughly around 11 or 12 years old. Just joined the local middle school program. That's how I got started.
Just by chance? Did you bring a flyer? Did a friend recommend it?
My brother George, who's a year older than me, was going to the school, and he was, came home saying, "Hey, there's wrestling at our school." So and I remember thinking, man, I want to wrestle because I grew up watching WWE,
of course,
and or WWF at the time.
Yep.
I was excited for the next year, and I was thinking I'm going to walk into ropes and rings and masks, and it was just a wrestling mat at the gym. We had to roll in and roll out. Yeah, that's how I got started. I remember a year prior, I couldn't wait to wrestle.
So then it's not exactly what you think, but obviously it stuck. And you had phenomenal success. Were you good right away? What do you remember about early on?
Yeah, you know what? I was, because of like the mindset growing up. Like I told you, I have an older brother named George, a year older. Then I have a little brother named Henry. And we used to what's the natural thing to do growing up? You can't punch each other, so you wrestle all the time. So I think it came really natural for me, starting right out of the gate. I think it was a coach or show technique. All I knew is that I couldn't lose. I mean, go home, tell my mom I lost, I wasn't good enough or wasn't strong. It was not one thing you wanted to do in a Mexican family. So you had to go out. If you're going to do something, you got to be the best at it. And I think that was instilled in me from the beginning.
Okay, so that's interesting. Not wanting to go home and tell your mom, or you couldn't. Would she be not happy? Would she, I don't know, punish you or no dinner?
No, she wouldn't punish me, but it was like
pride thing.
So if she watched me out there wrestling, I'm getting beat. I'm gonna get my mom's gonna tell me what she feels like. You don't go out there and you lose. And she would tell you, I don't want no losers in my house.
Okay.
If you're going to do there, you're going to go and you're going to win. And it's been like that from when I was 5 years old, man. She was competitive. And I just growing up and just going back and thinking right now that you got my brain spinning, was she would always have us play games, but we would always compete against each other. It didn't matter what it was, whether it was out in the playground. She'd have me and Henry race and who was the best. Monkey bars, just climb them. Who could do the most pull-ups since we were little.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So there's her, pushing you guys or yeah. When did it become like a serious thing? Because at some point you were like, I want to be a state champ. Was that right away? And obviously you won 4 titles and you never lost in high school. But when did it I guess I'm asking a couple things here. Did you play other sports? And if so, when did it shift to being like all in on wrestling?
Did we? No, we didn't play other sports. But growing up, when I was a kid, all you did was play sports, right? You go outside, if it was basketball season, you're playing basketball. If it's football, you're playing football in the neighborhood. We grew up in apartments, so it was probably, as soon as you walk out the door, you had a bunch of friends, and that was the thing to do, was to play sports. That's how I got started, and I think that's how you build athleticism and even being competitive. So when I started wrestling, it just came so easy. I think our first year, middle school, you don't know the level, how far you can go. I think it was the following year when I met my coach, Frank Saenz and Richard Fimbres, who were already traveling kids throughout the country. When I joined with them at Maryville High School, that's when I think there was something outside of just a local regular season.
So if you're going over these apartments, you walk out the door and there's a pickup football game or pickup basketball, or you guys are playing sports, was it the same way? Did you guys go outside and wrestle with the neighbors, or were you like, you went to the gym and wrestled on the mats and that's kind of where it all went down?
No, it was just, when you show wrestling goes back to BC's and even Angel wrestled Jacob for a blessing. It's what you do when a bunch of guys or a bunch of boys get together. You got to show your toughness. A lot of times punches get thrown, but for the most part, you would wrestle, not knowing what you're doing. You do, I remember grabbing somebody, a headlock with no arm in it. You start grappling, and you don't know those rules, but you knew if you had dominated somebody or not. And I think we used to do that growing up our whole life.
When did it turn into goals? Like, I'm guessing state champ and or beyond. Like, all right, this is like a thing. I'm not just trying to beat up my neighbors and prove I'm tough, but like, hey, I want to really do something here and make some accomplishments.
I think it's when I met my coaches, I call him, Frank was a father to me, and Richard is a brother to me. It's when I met them, and they had another level. And when I met them, they knew right away that me and my brother, there was something different about us. And I think right away, the standards were set high. You're going to be a national champ. You're going to be a world champ, national champ. And that was always said in practice every single day, 100 times in practice. You got to work hard. You got to bust your butt. You want to be a national champ, world, state champ. And you didn't know any different. You knew that's what you wanted to accomplish, and you were working hard for it.
And when you said, my coaches saw there was something different or special about me and my brother. When did you realize that? Or actually, what was different? Right? Two of you versus any other kid that was in the gym or most of the other kids. What was different? Why were you guys better or having more success?
I think because it was, wrestling's a tough sport.
Yeah.
But it was the love that we got for it right away. I don't know, it was like a bug just bit you and you fell in love with this sport. And we could not get enough of it. You could think about it day and night. You go to bed, cannot wait to get to practice because it was something new. And it was a whole nother world you didn't know about, and that, I think that's what it was. We just fell in love with the sport. And, one of the things that coaches look for in a kid is their commitment and if they're driven. And a lot of kids are being pushed by their parents. But, my mom worked so much. She had 2 jobs that we used to have to run to practice. And we would do it. And you've been to Phoenix. You were out here in the summertime.
Hot.
Man, me and my brother would run to practice when we didn't have a ride. We'd always had to depend on other families to help us out, which we're grateful for them. And when they couldn't give us a ride, we were like, all right, man, let's go. Let's start running. It was just that we were driven. I would say that.
And considering there was you, George, and Henry, how much wrestling went on at home? Were there broken lamps, broken arms, heads through the walls, whatever?
Oh, that was an everyday thing. You have, you grow up with the older brother. I actually had 2 older brothers, and then Henry's a year below me. But really, the ones that made you tough was my sister Gloria. She was 2 years ahead of me, and I remember always getting in arguments and fight with her because I always wanted to be right. And you don't usually win an argument with the girl. And she used to beat my butt, man. She was tough. Girls at that age, or what, I was maybe growing up 8, 9, 10, and she's 2 years older than me. I never want to argument. I never want to fight. We'd fist fight with George or Gloria. I mean, it was a brawl every day for the remote. Right, you're watching something, you want the remote, you fight, or you're sitting on the couch, and if his foot or his legs stepped over just 1 inch into your part, you push him off, and all of a sudden you start elbowing, and then the fists start going. So yeah, that's how it was.
It almost sounds like that was a breeding ground, and like, you know, as much as you go to practice and get good, man, I feel like that at home's like an extra workout or an extra place to sharpen your skills or develop toughness.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even like I always see this: the youngest ones that get beat up on, pounded on, always become the best at their sports. So it is. It was. I mean, there was a lot of a lot of fights, but we loved each other, and it's just part of growing up. You didn't know a difference. I mean, of course, we weren't going to hurt each other, but it was something. It was normal for us.
So did Henry get the brunt of the whoopings, and maybe that's why he's had all that success?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was the one. I mean, he took it. He got beat up. I mean, me and him were a year and apart older, right? And with him, it was I'm a year and a half older. And at one point we were growing up, I was just a little bigger, normal brother, a little bigger. And then I hit this growth spurt. Like I just got like 25, 30 pounds heavier than him and bigger than him. It took him a while to develop. So a lot of it wasn't really a fight between me and him because I just pound him. Like if he talked wrong, I was smacking him. If he walked wrong, I was kicking him. Like it's kind of how I grew up, right? It was like, so even now, I'm like, God, I regret a lot of that stuff, but, and I guess I made him who he is now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing.
So did you have goals going into high school, right? You never lost. You won 4 state titles. Did you think that was possible, or did you even look that far down the road as a 14-year-old ninth grader?
You know what? I didn't know the difference. I think it was growing up. It was just, being undefeated. I didn't even know if that was even a thing, I just knew that growing up, we grew up in a, somewhat religious home. We grew up Pentecostal in the word and the church. And it was like, you got to speak in faith and I'm a winner and you got to speak it. And I think that was, with my upbringing at home and with the coaches I had, that was just normal to me. Like, I didn't know the difference of like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be a state champ. I'm supposed to be a national champ. I'm supposed to be an Olympic champ. That's like the struggles that kids go with today with that, where, you see a lot of anxiety and kids not like putting wrestling on a pedestal, where to me, I don't know what it was. It was like, it was just something that was destined for it to happen. I don't know if I answered that question.
Yeah, sure. Did you ever put wrestling on a pedestal?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, wrestling's everything and wrestling never ends. And it does. It ends one day, right? Yeah. So I try to change the way now, coaching wise, I try to, change it a little bit. Wrestling, is great and everything, but, let's try to focus on what we can do today and not worry about national championships or world championships. As long as we get to work, what we do today will eventually, the outcomes will come later on. I think that's what I changed up a little bit.
Sure. I think that happens with age typically, right?
Yeah.
So you probably had opportunities for college. And I know you guys ended up going to Colorado Springs. What was that like? How did that come about? Where did the conversation start and how did they get to where they did?
Yeah, definitely. Well, here's what it was. I was, ranked really high in the country. I was probably number 1 ranked kid. I got a scholarship to go to ASU right away. You commit to your hometown, but I just didn't have the grades. I didn't have the academics to get into ASU. So an opportunity presented itself. I think Doc Bennett, they had just started the program in Colorado Springs, bringing in a kid, first year graduating high school, going to the Olympic Training Center, and then, from there, you go on to the university you want to go to. So I already knew I was going there. And, but Henry, they had not started that high school program yet. But Henry had went to the Olympic Training Center in 2004, the summer of 2004, to be Patricia Miranda's training partner. The first year that the Olympics sanctioned women's wrestling, and he trained there. And then I think they looked at him. They were like, "Hey, this kid, who is this kid?" And they're like, "It's Henry. His brother's coming next year." When they saw him, they're like, "He needs to come with his brother." So that's kind of how that whole everything started for me and him, because I was already going to go, but it was he came with me because they saw him training. I mean, he would go to freestyle practice, women's practice, Greco practice. He was practicing all day, and they're like, "Who is this kid?" And when they found out, they brought him along.
What was that like moving to Colorado and full-time wrestler essentially?
It was good. It was different. It was definitely being on your own, not being with family and friends, being in the dorms, being alone by yourself. Before, we'd have to being in a household, we have to sleep in 2-3 deep in a bed,
Mm-hmm.
on a floor, on a couch. Now we have our own separate room, which was kind of weird for me. Henry lived down the hall, and I was in the middle of the hall. He was at the end. It was kind of lonely a little bit at first.
Okay, to that, what was the toughest? What did you like most about it? And it's kind of a two-sided question. What was the toughest transition living on your? Kind of some of the things you said, but yeah.
Yeah. The toughest was probably just that, family and friends. You're used to a certain way of life, and you're comfortable. And I think having to be on our own, and we didn't have very much, but we had everything we needed was there. We had food, we had shelter, we had water, we had the best coaching in the world, and that right there drove you, right? It was the fact that you had goals to be the best, and no matter what. And I mean, the worst thing was that I was bored or I couldn't see my family. I mean, not a big deal, right? As long as your goals are so high, set so high, and learning there with the best coaches. I mean, that's what drove you.
Yeah. And how long did you train? How long did you live in Colorado and train out there?
I was there from 2004 to I trained there about 2011 or 10. And then, got out, I was in the Army for a little bit. They got out of the Army, but I stuck around Colorado till about 2014. So I was there in Colorado for 10 years, but I would probably train for 7, 8.
Okay. Tell me about the Army. What was the decision like? Why did you decide to go into the Army?
Man, it was probably the best decision. Being in the Army, I think if you're gonna wrestle, maybe then now it's a little different with RTCs and a lot of guys are getting paid more money. But when I was wrestling from 2004 to 11, you didn't have those opportunities you have now. Yeah. So, and even you could take that back to Dave Schultz days where we had more, but not that much more. So being in the Army, they took care of you, your family, medical. You got paid every month. You knew you could pay the bills. I think at that time, I mean, a lot of guys didn't have the money to do extra stuff. Yeah, you were at the training center and you got, your meals and shelter. But when you're out of college, you're 25, 26, it's kind of hard to rely on other people. So the Army provided security is what I would say.
And what were your obligations? Right, you're in the Army. Obviously, I don't believe you're like going over in combat, but like, what do you? They're paying you, and like, what? Why? What are you doing?
The obligations really. Your job is to train and wrestle, and that was it. I mean, I went to formation on Mondays in the morning, but I mean, I didn't wear my uniform my uniform very much because I was constantly. My job was to wrestle. And it was the greatest thing, and I think it still is. If there's anyone out there that they don't know what to do, I would recommend that you call Bruce or you call Sean Lewis, man, and see what they got to offer. I truly believe in that program.
Sure. So at some point you moved back to Arizona. I know you were coaching at Fight Ready. Were you coaching anywhere else before that?
No, I wasn't. I was out of the sport for about 2-3 years. There's a love-hate relationship with the sport.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be done with it. And that's kind of how I felt. And then eventually I got dragged in. I think it was a lot of it was, you had this void that you didn't accomplish, or a lot of things that you set out to do. And I think a lot of it was just avoid being ashamed of not, you put this, like I said, this wrestling on a pedestal, and everyone, you feel like everybody's relying on you to do great things. And so for a little bit, I didn't even want to come home. So when I worked my way back, I think Fight Ready opened up an opportunity for me and to be a wrestling coach there. Finally, I think after like 2-3 years out of it, I'm like, I'm done. I'm ready to get back into the sport. I'm going to be the best coach ever. I had this whole speech in my head that I did. And at that time, when I remember saying I'm done, not being part of the sport, Dave Zolwine of Fight Ready was like, hey, you should, think about coaching here. And little by little, I got back into it. And now we're here at Valiant College Prep.
Was Fight Ready training wrestlers, or was it training fighters in wrestling for fighting, or both?
It was both. It was both. When I got there, Henry was just starting. Well, he was in the sport for a couple of years now, and they wanted to start a wrestling program, and it was in like North Scottsdale. So, it just worked out that they wanted a program, and I was looking to coach. And with that came, helping and coaching a lot of the MMA fighters we have there.
Okay. And so I know we talked about this when I visited, but when did you hear about Valiant? How did this opportunity present itself? Well, what did you hear about Valiant, and what did you think at first? Because it's not normal.
It's not normal until you're here, right? You get to see it. A lot of it starts with the vision, and I think, the visionary of this whole school was Eric Larkin and Mike Douglas. And at the time, me and, I had my club, it was called Olympus Wrestling, and then Larkin and Mike Douglas had Thoroughbred Wrestling. And we were competitive, we were rivals, but, we were friends. We didn't have that. I didn't want to see him win, he didn't want to see me win. No, we wanted to both see ourselves grow in the sport. And I think, when he presented this idea to me, he asked, if he has this idea about being starting a private school, a wrestling school. And at first I wasn't hesitant, but I was like, I don't see it. What if we do charter? Because at the time, charter schools were just blowing up. He goes, no, we have to do private school. So I trusted Larkin because, when I was a kid, Larkin was the man. Larkin was the golden boy of Arizona, and great human being, great guy. Ever since I was young, he's about 4 or 5 years older than me. So when I was at Maryville wrestling, and I was a better wrestler, I was one of the top guys in the country. So in my room, I couldn't get pushed. So Larkin would have come out and wrestle with me. And that's a 35, 40-minute drive from him. And he'd come out and wrestle with me. So when he told me this, when I got back, I told him, hey, man, if you ever need anything from me, just let me know. And I think he made the call, and we got it going.
And so for anybody who doesn't know, explain what Valiant Prep is.
I think Valiant Prep is the first of its kind, where it's a vision that, I would say like-minded people came together. It's a private school. We have 75 students right now. This is our first day of school today. It's exciting
congrats.
to see everybody back. Yeah. And we have 75 kids. We have most of them wrestle. I would say 98 to 99% of them wrestle. We have also about 20 girls in our program as well. So we're growing the sport of the girls wrestling. And it's a wrestling school. It's a private school, but we focus. I mean, it's a good school academically, but yeah, it's driven by a bunch of wrestlers.
Yeah, and let's talk about the academic side, because I feel like maybe it gets lost, or at least what I believe I've heard from you guys is it's a really strong and probably overlooked component of the school. Huge component, right? Schools are for academics. This one's a little bit of both, but where does Arizona lie with typically the academic side of things compared to the rest of the country? How does Valiant Prep help maybe make up that gap?
Well, Arizona, I would say, is probably one, and when it comes to academics, one of the lowest in the states. I'm not sure exactly what number we fall on, but most private schools, like this is a private school, you test in if you're smart enough to come into a private school and you don't have Valiant. So a lot of times we get kids that come in with the 3rd grade reading level, 2nd grade reading level, and we help them catch up. So we'll specialize a lot of it with kids that aren't proficient in reading or math, make sure that we put enough effort into those kids. So our school ratio is 10 to 1, 10 students to 1 teacher. So they get more attention and they don't fall through the cracks of the school of public schools. Our teachers and our principal is on top of every single kid. The parents get an email every week, if not a couple. If they're doing good, they get an email. If they're not paying attention or they're not doing their work, they're constantly being there's emails being sent out, phone calls. We don't leave any of those kids behind. We make sure that we don't just pass them through. We're gonna catch them up. I think that's what makes us a little different and makes us a little more makes us special. The fact that it's not just wrestling, it's the academics.
And there's 75 kids. Is it 7 through 12? What are the grades?
6 through 12.
6 through 12. Okay.
Yeah, 6 through 12. So we have every subject. We have already put in a few kids into the Division I schools. We have Emilio Yazagiri at ASU. This year we've put Tanner Mendoza at Little Rock. Benji Alanis, he went to Northern Colorado. So, I mean, we're getting them where they need to go.
And it's tuition based, but there's like assistance for some kids because probably not every kid can afford it. Is that right? And how does that work?
Yeah, there's assistance, there's scholarships for a lot, not, people that can't afford coming to the school. There is assistance if they can't afford it. We have a large group of, when you were here, if you look at the area we're in, it's not the nicest, it's the roughest part of town. But our goal is to get young kids that, Arizona kids and get them to the next level, which is wrestling's awesome. But my goal, my vision is getting them to Division I, Ivy Leagues. That's what I want to see from our program.
And let's talk about Eloy and these Eloy boys. I came down and we spent a few days at Valiant. We went down to Eloy, which is like an hour away, but can you describe to me this group, I don't know, 12, 15, give or take, kids? I think there's a couple girls mixed in too, but they do everything together.
Oh, you want to talk about a good group of kids. I mean, you were out here a month ago. You have Emilio Yazagiri Sr. running the show, man, driving the bus. And I think he's a visionary as well. He sees, his boy coming to him at 7th and 8th grade and said, Dad, I want to wrestle at, ASU, or I want to wrestle at Division I in college. And that was unheard of in that town. So I think with him, he reached out and we got close. We're really, really close with that whole group. I think they remind me a lot of the way I was brought up, the way I grew up, which is it was the same thing. We had one coach that had a vision for us to do better. And it's the same thing with Eloy. They're tough kids, respected. They're real respectful. They work hard. I mean, you were out there. What did you think about it?
It's crazy. It's 116 degrees. They're wrestling in a garage shop turned into, there's like a 3 strips of mat or something. They turn on the oscillating fan and it feels like a hairdryer because it's blowing this hot air on you. They finish practice and they go, somebody's mom or grandma makes food for all of them. They'll hang out, go jump in the canal, maybe take a nap, maybe they're just together the whole time. They come back and train again, maybe a third time, and then they're going over to somebody's house to barbecue in the evening. Again, all of them together the whole time playing, they're roughhousing, they're beating up on each other, they're picking on each other in a fun way, but, they're just like a bunch of brothers. It was, we're doing a film project on them. I'm really excited for that to come out because it's like nothing I've ever really seen. And I was really impressed with, and you said Emilio Sr. kind of runs the ship, and they had Ray Helio, one of the dads, and Coach Ibarra, Izzy, the Cajun Mexican, I call him, because you can't understand what he says, but they're all just so impassioned and It's a real cool thing they got going on. I've never seen anything like it.
No, definitely. There's another part of, of our country, our great, beautiful country that, people have not been able to see, right? You talk about Midwest farm boys. Oh, we
Yeah.
got some farm boys in Arizona too. It's in the desert at 116. Tough kids, man. Tough, tough kids. And I think just with their fruits of their labor, man, they are, put their, two kids into the Division 1. They would have never, nobody would have ever thought that kids coming out of Eloy would happen. I mean, because I grew up when I was wrestling and I was in middle school, I would rival against kids in Eloy. But outside of middle school, you don't hear of them anymore. They're done. I don't know what it is. They either get a job or they get a girlfriend. They get into trouble. You start hanging out with the wrong crowd. But with Emilia, Rogelio, and Izzy, they changed a whole generation. And I truly believe, and I said this when I first met them, that they were gonna change that town. There's gonna be a movie about you guys from the first time I met them, because I knew how driven they were.
Yeah.
So they have two kids already. The first two kids to graduate went to a Division 1 school, which is, man, that's why we're doing this here at Valiant.
Yeah. That's Davion, Guanajuato, and Emilio Jr., right?
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty awesome. Okay, let's talk coaching a little bit, because I got to see you kind of doing your thing, and there's some coaches who are just like, whatever they've always done is what they do, and it's fine, and they work hard and they do drills, but I feel like you were like taking the newest things and implementing them, whether it's technique or like style of coaching or structure of practice. How much are you changing the way you coach as time goes on?
Yeah, just the traditional, changing that paradigm of old school wrestling and coaching. There's nothing wrong with that. Being the toughest and the most conditioned is always, will take you very, very far. I truly believe that, with FloWrestling and YouTube and the information, it's the information age. With all this, you have to change with the times. You have to educate yourself. And I think a lot of it is just the way my brain's always thinking, how can I make things better? And I just think the old way of doing things, it's over, it's done. If you don't change with the times, which is a new wave of kids, right? Every generation will tell you, oh, you're soft, because I was told that, and the generation before me, and you had the baby, right?
Yeah.
But now you're dealing with a whole nother, generations used to be every 20 years and then every 10. Now it's every 2-3 years. Generations are changing. I'll give an example. My daughter used to watch a lot of, she was probably the last generation of watching cartoons. My son, who's 12, I don't think he ever got into cartoons. I don't know how I'm getting into this, but
That's how I love it.
He watches YouTube. He watches somebody playing video games. So you gotta learn to change. So not to say that they're softer, it's just you have to train them differently. Because if you still treat them the old school way, you're gonna lose them. So I try to be more educated. I mean, being with Henry, the MMA has really changed the way I coach more scientifically, recovery. With him, when he fought with Demetrius Johnson's fight, he did so much less and was in better shape. And a lot of it comes from the recovery. So we try to change it that way.
And maybe you just answer my question. Where are you getting most of your? You said I gotta stay up, stay current, and learn. And that's an example. But are there other examples of where you're learning how to coach? I'm sure part of that's collaborating with Eric and other things.
Yeah, I think, reading books, when somebody tells me, hey, man, you got to read this book, the Talent Code, you have to read The Inner Game of Tennis. I'm always educating myself outside of my sport. So I'm always watching wrestling. I don't watch any American wrestling. I'm always watching the Russians. I think they're doing it right. So for me, sometimes I go outside of my sport. So I look, when I was coaching, I'm like, okay, who has the best footwork in the world? Boxing. The other one to me is fencing. How can a fencer go in and out so fast and cover ground. So when I started to go and research fencing on YouTube and I'm watching, I'm like looking at their footwork, and you start to look and you're like, wow, this is wrestling. They're changing levels. They're like changing levels so deep, and they're moving backwards and forwards so fast. So I'm like, I'm changing what I'm doing. I got to focus on footwork. So I'm always educating myself with anything I can. If I'm at a tournament, I see a 8-year-old do a move, I'm like, I'll walk up to him and ask him, what did you do? I don't care. I'll learn from anybody.
I love that. That is awesome. That is awesome. I never would have thought, probably most wrestlers would say fencing. We work so much harder. That's it. Come on. That's, I don't know how long the game, I don't even know what to call them. It's match game. It's short. It's like, how can we take anything from that? The footwork though, that's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's when I met a few people with Sergey was at the training center when I was first got there. I knew I always wanted to coach. So I'd ask him, hey, Sergey, how do you guys do it in Russia? What makes Russia so good? And he would tell me. He said, oh, at 8 years old, 7, only games, soccer, maybe soccer. You're like, what? And then I started to educate myself with, I'll show you right now. Watch this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Principles
So,
of sports.
Yeah, so it's the principles of sports training. So, when I talk to friends of mine, they're like, hey, you got to read this book. This is an old German book, 1960. I have another one. Shoot, I'll get it right here. This is the original, The Fundamentals of Sports Training. This is what most coaches right now this is an old Soviet book. So it talks about training a kid according to his age group. So that's what I try to focus on kids. And I focus more on development than winning. And I know it's hard. I lose a lot of parents, but that's what I fall into. The process and development. The winning will come later.
Well, I don't, because you guys don't get to compete the high school season. You probably don't get as much matches over 365 days as a kid who goes to school and competes for the Arizona State title. So do you feel like part of it is that you should develop the whole time, but you're not worried about the next competition constantly, and you can just try to get better?
Yeah, and that you're 100% correct. If you really look at these books, or you look and you start to educate yourself on this, like a kid should not be competing 100, 200 matches a year, or a kid at that age, or let's take a 9-year-old, should not be competing 10 matches on every Saturday. And I know a lot of parents, they'll tell me, hey, man, we went to these scraps and we got 20 matches this weekend. I'm like, keep doing that. We'll see how far your kid goes. We'll see how far your kid goes. But for me, my son, who's 12 years old now, he started last year. I didn't get him wrestling until last year.
Yeah.
He was barefooted, most of the time in the wrestling room, because I would not let him compete or wrestle. Now I'm starting to develop him a little bit because, now he's at that age. He's 12. He's going to be 13 soon. And he did 3 competitions last year, and that was it. So I'm going to take my time, because I don't have to, here being at Valiant, I don't have a quota of winning every tournament. You have to win so many matches to be a coach here. I think Larkin just sees the vision, the overall vision, which is to develop and grow these kids. And if we fast track them, we won't get them. They won't last in the sport. They will not be wrestling in college right now.
What's the big picture goal at Valiant? What do you guys want to be in a year, 5, 10 years? What do you want to be happening? What's it going to look like?
I mean, I can speak for myself. I would love to see more models that we have throughout the country. I think this should be the new wave. I think we're a perfect example of, taking a chance, taking a faith, taking a lead. Like, man, this is something unheard of. I would love to see, it doesn't have to be a Valiant. I would love to see a model like us throughout the country. If we are ever going to compete in the world year after year after year, you guys got to remember, the guys we have right now on our world team, they're a lot older now. Mm-hmm. Once they leave, who's going to take their place? So I think we're in a unique situation right now with, and I was telling this to McKnight at they're in Italy. I was just telling him my theory. I think, one thing that I'm hearing around the country, or, everyone talking about how the Russians are struggling a little bit more to keep kids involved with technology and phone and social media and Instagram. And I think we're in a unique situation because we have dealt with those type of situations since our country was born, right? Drug, sex, and rock and roll. And how do we get kids to come in? They go from being devoted to a certain sport. Now they see the outside world. Man, we could make a big jump and leap if we focus on our development in this country. That's what I would like to see, more development throughout the country.
All right. So let's go calendar schedule, whatever you want to call it. You guys, you just came, I saw you at Fargo. You went straight from Fargo to cadets, or U17s they call it now. You guys, I think you said you paused, but when do you pick up again? How hard do you train? When's the next competition for these guys and girls?
Yeah, so we had a week off. Most of our wrestlers were about 2 to 3 weeks off already. I usually don't let them come back on the mat till September. I have to switch it up this year because I love to, when I talk about recovery, I want them to recover and get ready. But Super 32s is our next focus. That's our number one priority. So we're going to get them going now. We were trying to get a competition in, at least 2 competitions before Super 32. So I think we're going to see if we can, maybe go to DC's Fargo qualify or not Fargo Super 32 qualifiers. We're trying to get on the mat and folk style as soon as possible, just because since we've been here, we struggled at Super 32s because that's our only folk style competition we have all year. And we are a folk style team. It's just we're not able to compete during the regular season. So what we're going to try this year is get 3 or 4 competitions before we have to just stop and train again, just focus more on training, because from November to February, we're kind of off season. So we're going to make that our off season. Crazy. And we're going to mix it up a little bit.
Is there a goal would you guys like to be able to compete in the Arizona High School State Tournament? And is there a goal to get that, I guess it's called a sanction, I think?
We don't want to compete in the Arizona State Tournament. We would love to be an associate member, which would allow us to compete with teams like Blair, teams like SEM, be part of the national prep. We would love to be part of the national prep. Sure. We've been working on that for the last 4 years. I think we've been denied. It'd be awesome, man. I think if we you get Valiant on with Sam and Blair and who else? They have another team outside of those 2. You put us in the mix, man, and it just competitions will make you say everything grows. So we would love to do that. But if it's not an option, I don't think our goals change anyways. We just continue to get better and move forward.
It almost feels like the way with we're getting ready for Super 32s right now, and it almost feels like more like the freestyle calendar than like the high school or college where it's like every weekend, every 3,
Yeah, and I love the fact that that's what we should be doing. So it is more like we train more like professional, like the senior athletes, because we don't compete every weekend and we don't compete duels. We would love to do that. We would love to compete against them. We have some tough kids that I think, deserve the chance to be recognized at the highest level or the best tournaments in the country. We just don't have that luxury right now, but I think we will soon. I mean, we're getting better, and hopefully, next couple months we can compete against some better teams or even tougher teams. I think we're going to host an event here October 1st. Okay. We're going to try to get people to come out and wrestle against Christian Castillo. I would say he's probably the best kid in the country right now. Kyler Larkin. We want to get those guys wrestling the best kids in the country.
Okay, you mentioned Christian Castillo. What was that? He jumped over the kid in the closing seconds. Walk me through that from your point of view. Or it's hard to say that you didn't. It's hard to never count a kid out, but like reality sinks in. It's like realistically, he's probably not gonna win. He's 3 seconds left, 6, whatever it was, and he jumps right over the kid. Were you surprised?
I was. I actually kind of missed it. I put my head down. Like I was like, I was like, oh, but you know what? He was winning 6-0. The kid came back on him. That last call was so questionable. They gave it to the Iranian. We still had the leg. It was kind of a weird situation because I don't want to say it's corruption but it was a bad call. We actually won the call. So they gave the kid a push out and they reviewed it. The judge came back and he said, challenge loss, and then gave us a point. If you go back and watch it, one of my coaches was there watching the whole situation. He said another ref yelled, no, challenge 1, 2, red. And like they had already gave us a point. The guy leaves, goes back to review, walks back and changes the score on us with 4 seconds left.
Wow.
Now, I don't know what to say about that. We knew going in there, things are going to happen. So we can rely on the ref. And when he jumped over, I was like, I mean, this guy's meant for this. This guy is so meant to be in that stage. Yeah. He has a personality to him.
That's and the mullet to match.
Oh, yeah. He even in the 80s, he could compete with the best mullets in the world.
Absolutely, man. Great. Well, I'm excited to see you guys out at Super 32 and to continue to watch Valiant Prep kind of move and grow and evolve. But we got Kyle Klingman over here hanging out, and he's got a set of questions for you. He's going to try to stump you. So,
alrighty.
We'll let Kyle take over.
Yeah, one of the rare times I have 6 questions for you. Usually it's 5, but it's our game called Sweat It Out. Are you ready to play?
Yep.
All right.
Let's do it.
Number 1, according to the book of Genesis, you mentioned this earlier, what part of the body did the angel injure when the angel wrestled Jacob?
His hip.
You got it. Where's the bell? Yeah, he's got a bell. All right, number 2. What superstar baseball player with the last name of a fish currently plays for the Los Angeles Angels?
Oof. I don't know.
Mike Trout.
Mike Trout. All right.
Have you heard of it? Isn't it strange?
No, I don't watch baseball.
Okay, but it's the Los Angeles Angels. Isn't that the Angels, if you said that in English?
Yeah, it is. Los Angeles.
Yeah, kind of strange. Number 3, name a college wrestling coach who has the first name Angel.
Escobedo.
Got it. Number 4, what movie starring Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed is about an angel sent from heaven to help a desperately frustrated businessman by showing him what life would be like had he never been born?
Oof. I don't know.
All right, it's a popular Christmas movie called It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh.
Got the angel theme going on. I see what you're doing here, Kyle.
Yeah. And number 5, what television show about a probationary angel sent to Earth teams with an ex-cop to help people?
Oh, man. I don't know.
Yeah, Michael Landon's Highway to Heaven.
You're throwing some crazy ones out here today, Kyle.
I know. And number 6, does Mark Bader's long hair make him look like an angel?
Yes.
That is true. That is true. Yep, you got it.
Kyle, thanks for the questions. Fantastic. And Angel, thanks for joining us, man. This has been a real treat. I love what you guys are doing out there at Valiant Prep. And I wish you guys continued success. We're going to leave you with the final word.
Oh, hey, you guys, thank you guys for having me, man. And it's been an honor to be on the show. And thank you guys for the good work you guys are doing throughout the country and the sport, man, for growing it. I think you guys are the big reason why we are competing against Russia. The innovation of wrestling is, I think it all started with FloWrestling, and I appreciate it. And thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angel. Appreciate you coming on, and I'll continue to watch you guys tear it up. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye. All right, Kyle. Another banger of a show. Angel Cejudo and the guys out there in Valiant doing something really special, and hopefully it catches on and we see more of it, because I think I think it could really pay off and really help the country.
It's quite a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like no other. Can't wait to continue to follow what they do.
Absolutely. And look out for that film on the Eloy boys coming out later this year, maybe early next year. But really, really excited about that. So that's going to do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow with Anthony Ashnault. So for Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Bader. We'll see you then. Thanks.
See ya. Later.